Welcome everyone tonight to our fifth installment of the Silicon Slopes SMB series. We're super excited to have you, and we're really excited for our topic tonight. Tonight, I am filling in for Jeremy Andrus, CEO of Traeger Grills, who usually kicks off our deep dives. He's feeling under the weather, and so he's asked me to fill in. My name is Tanner Potter. I am currently working with the Silicon Slopes Economic Impact Committee, and I'm an investor at Kickstart Seed Fund, and recently graduated with my MBA from Harvard Business School. Tonight, as I mentioned, is our fifth installment. We try to cover a wide range of topics, everything from applying for PPP loans to adapting your business to the current environment. Last week's panel, as many of you know, was on mental health, and it was a terrific session. So if you want to find any of these, you can look in our Silicon Slopes YouTube channel and watch any of our past episodes. Tonight, we're going to go over what we think is a really important and timely topic, which is how should you think about reopening your retail, restaurant, or service business? As we've talked to small businesses, and as the governor's made a recent move in the moderate risk phase, a lot of business owners are wondering when they should reopen their business, where they should look for guidelines, and where they should look for resources. And so with that today, I'll introduce our moderator and our panelists. So our moderator for tonight is Jane Walters. She is VP of Culture and People, of People and Culture at Traeger. She's a proud Utahn with experience working across a wide variety of industries. Prior to Traeger, she spent time with Goldman Sachs, Target, and at Snowbird Ski and Summer Resort. So thank you so much, Jane, for volunteering and moderating this session today. Next, we have some terrific panelists. The first I'll start out here with is Lindy Nance. Lindy is the Vice President of Marketing and Advertising for Harmon's Grocery, where she leads Harmon's marketing and advertising efforts and serves as an operating board member. She cares deeply about bringing quality food experiences to Utahns, nutrition education, and eliminating childhood hunger. She's also on Harmon's COVID-19 task force, and we're really excited about her perspective. Next, I'll introduce Colton Solberg. Colton has been working in and around the restaurant industry for the past 25 years. In his current role with Heirloom Restaurant Group, he focuses on ensuring that everyone who dines at an Heirloom restaurant gets to eat well. Thanks for coming, Colton. Next, we have really an expert in many spaces. We have Candace Daly. She is the state director for the National Federation of Independent Businesses in Utah. She's also an independent government relations consultant for many other industries, including the Utah Beauty School Owners Association and the Utah Podiatric Medical Association. She and her husband, Jim, live in Farmington. Next, we have Mark Schlang. He is the president of Crown Ace Hardware, a chain of 18 Ace Hardware stores based in Huntington Beach, California, Arizona, and Hawaii. Mark also serves as Ace Hardware Corporation's board of directors. Ace currently operates 5,200 stores in the US and proudly serves Utah. So we want to thank each of the panelists for joining us and volunteering their time to talk about how they have navigated their process to reopening their business, or whether a few of them have stayed open during this times and have a lot of stories that they can share with us. And a special thanks to Jane for moderating. As we go throughout the session, we plan to have 2 separate polls, and we'll be as interactive as possible. So please continue to post your questions in the chat. So with that, Jane, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Tanner. I first just want to start off by thanking all of our panelists today for joining us today. I've had the chance to get to know them over the past few days, and am really looking forward to some of the insightful things that they can share with you guys that they've learned or that they're exploring themselves. I think one of the biggest things for us to all kind of acknowledge here is that this is a little bit unknown. We're all encountering unknowns. I know me in the people and HR space. there's questions and topics that are coming up that we maybe have never faced before or are facing more. No, we're all encountering in the past. And so, as we go through this, I want you guys to approach this, and as you're listening to the panelists today, think about the things that they're sharing and how they can apply to you in your businesses, regardless of what industry you're in. I think that there's a lot of fungibility of the advice that they're going to provide. We're going to break our discussion into two parts today. So the first part is going to be really on the kind of tactical side of things. Like, how do I adjust my operating model? Where do I find information about what's safe and what's not safe? And then the second half of our discussion, we really want to get into the people side of things, which is probably in some ways the more complex and in some ways scary side of it. So how do you engage your employees in the conversation? How do you engage your customers in the conversation to make sure that people feel safe as they come back to your business? And what we're going to do throughout this as well is we want to make sure that we're tailoring this to you. So we know that there's a variety of different businesses on the call today or watching the video later, and we want to know how you're feeling. And so we're going to open two polls. And John, I'm going to ask if you can maybe open the first one now, so we can start to get a sense of where the audience is coming from and what some of their top of mind topics are. So we'll open that poll. It'll be up here shortly, and then we'll walk through that and maybe have you guys start to tell us how you're feeling as we launch into some of the questions here. All right, so as you'll see, we've got the poll up here on the screen. You can respond by going to the link that's listed at the top of the page, or by texting, as you'll see the instructions here. So the question is, for those of you who have not yet reopened or remain very limited in operations, which option best describes your primary hesitation? Is it that you're unclear on requirements from local government and or health departments? Is there potential that maybe not enough customers will return to make your operations profitable? Are you concerned about the health and safety of your employees or customers? Or are you maybe, do you have a fear of the social stigma or public reaction to reopening? So as you start to respond to that, it'll take a few minutes, but results will start to come up. And while we wait for results to start populating, I'm just going to hop into the first question and really let our panelists get into the meat here. So the first question is, a plan is probably the most important part of this. So, what advice do the panelists have for people who are not sure where to get the information to put a plan together? There's a lot of resources out there. Where are some of the most reliable information sources, and how do you sift through that? Candace, can I maybe pass that over to you to give us the first little tidbit?
Sure. When I work with my small businesses that I represent, one of the first places that I want them to go to when they are trying to build confidence in either reopening or stay opening or building their business is to go to the coronavirus.utah.gov website. And I would not only read the links and the areas that you can connect from the front page, but I would literally go to /business and then read everything on that business page. It will tell you everything you need to know, from what you may still need to do for additional loan money to stay alive, which GoEd is opening a new one up on Monday, May 11th, and that information is on that website, to what you need to do to make sure that you're using the proper PPE for your type of business. And I represent a lot of personal service businesses, and the PPE for each of those personal service businesses is a different aspect. So you really need to be familiar with that. And any other locations that I may want to send you is nfib.org has some great information that you need that you could go to. And I would also go to the links that are connected to the CDC, the SBA, and the IRS. But the first two I gave you are probably going to give you the most information you can for your small business.
That's great. Thanks, Candace. Lindy, I know Harmon's has actually stayed open throughout this. Are those some of the same resources that you've used, or what other learnings have you had, or information sources have you used as you've started to put together your plans?
Yeah, I would agree with Candace. I know that the coronavirus.utah.gov site has a lot of useful information. For us, we had to create a plan pretty early in the process. And so we did defer to the CDC website for a lot of information. They had information out pretty early on what to watch for and how to plan. And the other really helpful thing for us was leveraging the resources of some of our share groups. We have share group partners across the country who are also small business owners in their own markets. So I think we just really sought a lot of advice and insight into what other people were doing that they found were working. I think in this case, there's really not an existing plan to put into action. And so we had to create our own pretty quickly. But those are all great resources to leverage.
You know, as Lindy, you mentioned there the idea of like putting together a plan. It made me think of you know, some of our businesses that are reopening right now. You know, I would love maybe Colton, if you could walk us through how you're thinking about reopening some of the restaurants in your group. Maybe share some of the thought process that went behind that and how you weighed different options. And maybe walk us through a path that you used so that people who are trying to figure out what it looks like for them can maybe try and walk through the same path of thinking as you took while weighing the different options.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we have, I mean, we run 7 different restaurants here in Utah County, and they're all reopened currently. We reopened, yeah, all of them by this past Monday. Some of them reopened over the weekend. I think a lot of what the process we went through, we certainly were looking at other, you know, what some other restaurants were doing, trying to get some information about, yeah, just best practices, trying, you know, see what other people were doing that was interesting or unique or different. But so there were a few restaurants that we were kind of looking at early on that kind of helped us as we, you know, we stayed open through the whole time. We pivoted in the beginning to do takeout and delivery, curbside, which for some of our restaurants was pretty natural. Others not so much for like a more sit down restaurant, but we saw other places doing, you know, across the country that we, you know, that we're aware of, other restaurants that we like, and they were doing some really interesting things in terms of how they were approaching it. And so we looked at a few of those places as kind of resources in terms of reopening or in terms of takeout delivery. But I think for us, you know, I think in the very beginning, we knew right off the bat that we've got employees that we're responsible to and that need to be working, and so we knew we would be doing something. And so, and I think one of our kind of core tenets as well is just that any action is better than no action at all. And so we felt like we needed to do something to keep kind of the heart of our businesses beating, even if it was at a much lower rate than we're used to. So I think that was it for us, was really looking around to see what others were doing. But as you know, other panelists have mentioned, it's an unprecedented time, and so it's not like there's a plan we had in our back pocket. We had to kind of shoot from the hip, but with some inspiration from others.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is an unprecedented time, and I love that message of, you know, just get out there and explore and see what others are doing. And, you know, I think in these cases, you can't underestimate the value of picking up the phone and calling others to ask, you know, what they're doing, to see if they want to, you know, join you in brainstorming ideas and share what you're thinking of as well. You may have things that they hadn't thought of. Mark, I know that, you know, with Ace Hardware, you guys have been open as an essential business throughout most of this. I'm sure your plans have changed and you've iterated on that. Can you maybe similarly share with us, you know, how you've approached that process of deciding on the initial structure of what things would look like and how you've reevaluated things as you've gone?
Sure. You know, it's interesting and I think that Colton was on it. I mean, the speed at which we're navigating this, and I can reflect back and say, hey, here's all what we did. But I just want to be clear, we didn't have a plan either. We said we need to be open, whether we're deemed essential or not. Our intent was to stay open. And fortunately, through a lot of work, we were deemed essential. And so we then said, okay, here's what's super important to us and our customers. How do we stay open, and what's key to our communities? What do we need to do? For me, it's all about confidence in our staff, confidence in our communities that we're safe, that we have what they need, and that we can be that resource to them. and everything fell from that. So for us, again, and I think this is going to be a general focus, and it kind of has to be, you have to be safe, and people have to have confidence in your ability to serve them and take care of your team safely. Then for us, it was, absolutely with the goal of staying open, we have to have the product that people need alongside with that safety. And that was the combination that everything else, that was kind of the umbrella under which everything else had to fall. And we just went from there. And the speed at which we would investigate and reach out to peer groups. And I think there's a ton of value, as was said, in using the resources. And I'm pulling people from all over the country. How are you doing this? What's working? Talking to grocery, talking to hardware. And we would take the best laid plans and we think that we had it all figured out. And 4 days later, we have to completely change that for some unforeseen impact that we just didn't plan for, didn't see. So the amount of time that we've been pivoting and changing and moving fast, and I would say historically, that was maybe not my strongest suit, and the team has just come together because, again, unprecedented, and every day there's something new that we're reacting to. So we're trying to be very proactive, yet being very reactive and just moving very quickly.
Yeah, I love that. And, as we look at the poll here, it looks like really the number one concern that people are highlighting is, not necessarily that they're unclear about where to get the information, but it's just general concern about the health and safety of their employees. And I think that resonates a lot with the way that you've approached your business. I really, really love that, Mark, thinking about how do you really create a very crisp and clear mission about what are our priorities. And so people can guide, their more detailed decisions towards those two things and understand how, every decision plays towards those two items. Maybe if you could walk us through it a little bit, Mark, with the safety in mind, it seems like to be the top concern of people here. What are some of the key safety precautions that you've put in place in your retail business?
Sure, and I would imagine, and not being any retail stores in Utah as of late, obviously the travel has been greatly limited, but I would imagine most of what you're seeing out there and what's being experienced in grocery and hardware, et cetera, is pretty similar. Very quickly, we adopted, so I guess it varies. Some communities have more strict policies than others. Maybe masks are required of customers in some and some aren't. So I think if you were to look at our stores, very quickly, we put certain things in place. And this happened very quickly. And a lot of it was like, hey, this is what's going to be important. And then we would hear the next day, well, I mean, things as simple as public bathrooms, our teams were like, hey, we don't know what goes on in there. It's hard to manage that. And we saw this with Starbucks as well, locking down restrooms that hadn't been locked down before, restrooms, sneeze guards at the registers, limited access, limited hours, everything you can imagine and everything that has been seen. We just really took that, again, that high level of what's going to drive confidence in our team and in our customers. What things can we not introduce from the outside world, and things that do come in, how do we treat them so people are confident that they can touch the product or they can come in our stores. And I couldn't be more proud of how well our teams have adopted this. The cleaning protocols, we take a step back and go, like, I think we were clean before, but we really weren't that clean. And now we're saying we'll probably never go back. This is our new normal, regardless of the condition of the coronavirus, because it's the right thing to do. And there's a lot of things. And I think what's important, what we've learned is we've had to strip out a bunch of non-essential parts of our business that we may have thought were essential before, but now to make the time to do the cleaning and to really focus on having a safe and healthy workplace, some of those things that were essential no longer are, and they're gone, and they may never come back either. So really being intentional in what we're doing. And again, best laid plans, some of what we think, I could share a number of examples where we put policy in place and then within days or weeks, we've had to undo it because that had an unexpected consequence in the store. But we're hearing from our team. So we're doing a lot of listening, a lot of engaging. And fortunately, the teams all feel very engaged. They feel safe, which is my number one thing. And we check on that constantly. And as a result, we're getting a lot of great feedback, which is helping us, again, bob and weave through the process.
That's great. I love that. Maybe switching gears a little bit to Candace, thinking about, types of services that are in Utah just reopening now. So we maybe haven't had a chance to see how they, adjust and operate like we've had with retail. What are some of the key safety precautions that you think some of these establishments should be thinking about as they look to reopen?
So some of the businesses that were not open, but maybe were open electronically and our personal services are CPA, law, medical, engineering, architecture. A lot of those were still open during this, but they didn't have their physical offices open. They were still doing everything by Zoom call and telephone calls. Most of them will want to start opening their offices back up again. They're going to need to think about sanitization. They're going to have to comply with the governor's Utah Leads 2.0 document, which is now has a phase 4.0.1 that they're going to have to abide by, which means if you have clients or customers in your store that you are going to have to be wearing a mask. How do I put this? I guess the governor is encouraging the customers and the clients to wear masks. In certain counties, they are requiring them to be worn. Some of the businesses that have been totally closed that are trying to reopen are the personal services that have to be done face-to-face, the hair cutting, the cosmetology, the salons, the spas. I've been working with that particular industry to try and figure out how they can open back up under the orange phase of the governor's lead, Utah Leads 2.0. And under this orange phase, they literally have to have everyone in their place of business wear a mask that is a professional. They need to social distance. The social distancing is 6 feet. The receptionist needs to wear a mask. They need to have, and at first they weren't even going to let them have waiting room space, but if they have waiting room space, they have to social distance 6 feet in the waiting room while they're sitting and waiting to get their hair cut. When the last client leaves, you have to sanitize the entire area where that client was sitting. Anything they touched, all surfaces that are around that particular client that was there. And you need to make sure that the next client that comes in feels comfortable. And I noticed that on the poll that it was whether or not they felt like their customers would feel comfortable or not showing up and being there. And I have a personal story that was interesting that I heard this week. One of the gentlemen that works in the Utah State Health Department showed up to get his hair cut on Saturday. And when he walked in, the person that was going to cut his hair did not have a mask on. He had his mask on. And she said, "Should I be wearing a mask?" And he said, "Yes, you should. And I brought you one." And he handed her a mask. And then he did wear his mask for the entire time that she was cutting his hair until she needed to cut over his ears. And then he removed the mask from one side and then he removed it from the other side. But the governor did come out with a new requirement. And let me read that to you. It says here, clients obtaining personal services can remove their masks when it would interfere with the service they are receiving, because the original requirements that came down were basically saying you couldn't trim beards or mustaches, but we couldn't figure out how a dentist could have someone open their mouth and work inside it, but we couldn't trim beards and mustaches. So we've been working very hard to make sure that these businesses can comply with these requirements, but then also work hard to make sure they can acquire the PPE.
Yeah, I mean, on that topic, Candace, we keep seeing in the news, and it seems like things have gotten a little better lately. But what advice do you have for people who maybe are concerned about being able to find PPE? Where should they think about starting that search?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I would get on coronavirus.utah.gov and go to business and / and look at all of the sources that they have for PPE there. The amazing thing about Utah is that we have had manufacturing businesses in the state of Utah under the direction of Todd Bingham with the Utah Manufacturing Association retool their entire manufacturing lines to make face shields that can be used in spas when they're doing services that they may be nervous about someone sneezing or like a facial or something like that. They've retooled their manufacturing lines to sew gowns for PPE and make masks. There are a lot of locations on that coronavirus.utah.gov. In fact, the governor, that's another one I wanted to talk about. The governor opened up a new program this week called PPE Push Pack Program, and it was launched to help businesses that are under 50 employees. You can find the link to it on coronavirus.utah.gov, and they will provide for free for you and your employees up to under 50, the PPE that you need to get your business open to get started. And then hopefully we can even shake loose a few more. We've had other businesses that have started making all kinds of alcohol and hand sanitizer, local businesses. And we've been trying to feed that all to the coronavirus.utah.gov site.
I love that. That's so great to hear that that resource is available, because I know it's been a confusing space for people to navigate. I also loved how you walked us through some of those checklists and some of the guidelines and things that people need to be thinking about. I know us personally at Traeger, we've been leaning on those documents pretty heavily to tell us, what do we need to do to think about bringing people back into the office safely. One of the questions that I was getting from a lot of my employees that maybe might provide some comfort to those of you that are concerned about the health and safety of your customers is, well, where did those guidelines come from? Who informed them? They're coming from coronavirus.utah.gov, but who really wrote them? And as I looked into that, there's a lot of different angles and people that have been involved in writing those. There's a lot of people who actually have expertise in healthcare that were part of writing those. And so I do want to just echo, I think that's a great resource that's very kind of well informed, and we're still learning a lot about this disease. So I'm sure that it will change and evolve as we learn about what works and what doesn't work. But it seems like they've been very proactive in updating those as they've learned things. So I do want to remind people, you can ask questions directly in the chat to the right of the video. We actually have one, so I want to throw that in now. Some visitors to our offices don't take pandemic seriously and view not wearing a mask as a political statement. We wear masks when we have visitors in our office, and we make that masks available. So how do we get our visitors to understand that wearing a mask isn't for them? It's for other high-risk individuals. Maybe I can pass it over to you, Mark. I don't know if you've had a situation like that in any of your stores since you've been open, and maybe you want to talk through how do you address that with customers?
Sure. I would say that unfortunately it's probably the hardest part of all of this. All of our California and Hawaii stores are mandatory for all customers, whether it's a municipal requirement or it's ours. We've imposed it for the majority of our stores to again protect and build confidence in our stores. And I would say it's like everything else. 99%, maybe 98% of the population is supportive or understanding or will abide by that. 2%, at least in our world, is always going to be the challenge. And they're challenging because we have a policy, and I'll make it very quick. Every doorway has signage up that you have to have a mask, and we'll have somebody stop somebody if they come in without one, and hey, ask them, maybe they have one in their car. If they say, no, I don't, would you like to buy one? No, I won't. Will you pull your shirt up over your face? No, I won't. Here, I'll give you one and just take it. Happy birthday. That'll solve most of it. And then there's that 1% that it's a political thing, it's a rebellious thing, and it can get very ugly. And it's just that 1% that, again, our team comes first. It's really changed the nature. I mean, and I'll just throw this in real quickly. I'm in retail, and the golden rule is the customer comes first and second and third. And that's really changed a bit. They're always going to be second and third now. My team has to come first, because without them, nobody gets served. We cannot be essential. We cannot serve our community. And so people that are super problematic, we will ask them to leave. And sometimes it gets a little uncomfortable, and the team is supportive of that. But it's a challenging one. But I would say of all of it, it's a very, very, very small percentage. Most people understand and will play by the rules. But I think that goes for almost anything in business. most people are good, and there's always going to be some bad actors that are tough to work with.
It's so true. Lindy, I don't know if you've had any similar experiences. I think, in California where Mark is, things have been, it's a little bit more government mandated, but here in Utah, it has been more voluntary for the most part. Are you approaching it in a similar way? Are you hearing it? Are you feeling a little bit of a different vibe since there's not the same kind of government mandate? And how have you dealt with that in your stores?
I do think it's been different, but there are a lot of similarities between what Mark describes and what we've experienced in our stores. We are definitely encouraging all of our customers to wear masks, but we are requiring our associates to do so. And I think the presumption there is that it's really our goal to do everything we can to keep everyone safe. Our mission at Harmons is to value our associates and exceed our customers' expectations. And so what we've done is we've politely asked people. We find that people appreciate being asked to do something instead of being mandated to do something. We have kind of had this playful approach in that we have, and really this came from our associates, but we have this superhero theme in our store going on. We've been posting on social media, hashtag supermarket superheroes. And so as part of that effort, we've reminded people that superheroes wear masks. And so we're asking people to support that. And in a way, I think that does create kind of a lighthearted, playful tone. As Mark said, you're always going to have the 1 or 2% that for whatever reason, whether it's political, whether it's just personal on some level, they don't abide by it. They don't agree with it. And we're not pressing those people. But by and large, we feel that once we remind them that it really is to protect this health and safety of our associates so that we can continue serving them, most people have been pretty apt to participate and willing to kind of go along with what we need to do right now under the circumstances. And it's a shift for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that superhero theme. That's so fun, and I think is a really good way to resonate with children as well, who maybe are a little bit confused by this. I think we're already shifting into the second topic, second half of our discussion here really nicely. And so maybe John, let's put up the next poll. So while John pulls that up, the question on this one is going to be, what do you think will be the biggest concern your customers will consider in their decision to return? So really here, we want to shift gears and talk about, how do you make the people feel safe? Not just the logistics, but how do you really engage people to know what they should be doing to make each other safe, like we've been talking about, and how should we think about, making people feel comfortable so that they are willing to return to our businesses. But I think Mark has really done a good job setting the tone that it's really about the safety of our teams. And so one of the things I would love to do is maybe shift gears a little bit. And Colton, if you want to talk to us a little bit about how you're communicating with employees to make sure that they feel safe and know that their role in keeping others safe.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, Mark mentioned, I think getting out in front of it, and I think that's certainly been something we've been working on. It has been, I'm sure as everybody's experienced, it's been kind of a crazy time where it's been such a dynamic, changing environment that, what goes today is likely going to change tomorrow. And so trying to keep everybody on, in the same line of communication so that everybody has the same information and they're not saying, oh, well, we were doing this yesterday or we're doing this, 2 days ago. And it's like, no, this is what we're doing today. That certainly has been a challenge, but I think so just communicating as much as we can, and especially using a lot of technology to do that with our teams, with our managers. And so I think, a lot of the things that have been mentioned, the basic things in terms of sanitizers and face masks and signage on the windows at our restaurants. And, we've gone through obviously and separated tables so that people are 6 feet apart. And then obviously, cleaning protocols in terms of high touch surfaces and things that need to be looked after. We also are doing, we're taking our employees' temperatures every day and talking about where, have they been around people, some of those just real fundamental things. I think one piece that we want to make sure I think we felt early on was important in addition to the kind of the baseline safety measures that I think everybody's doing, hopefully everywhere. One thing that we've seen a big spike in needing is just talking to our teams. I think kind of their emotional, kind of mental health, that that I think if we don't take that into account and we're not factoring that in, oftentimes they're maybe not hearing the messages about kind of some of the really basic things. So I think, we spent a lot of time, I think especially in those first few weeks, really just, talking with our managers, saying, hey, we're going to get through this. This is what we're going to do. And then we come in the next day and we kind of repeat that again, and we repeat that again. And that we've seen that's been helpful, I think, to kind of settle people down so that they can actually hear what we're saying has been really valuable for us.
Yeah. Have you, as you've gone through the different iterations of the safety protocols, have you engaged your employees, and how have you kind of engaged them in coming up with the plans?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned, so we've been doing, we started doing a daily Zoom kind of huddle with our team every afternoon. And that was really helpful in terms of just getting everybody together at the same time for a quick, 15, 20-minute meeting, so that we could get information from them quickly. And then using, like a group me chat to kind of, as things, especially in those first few days, as we didn't really know, we kind of, dining rooms closed. And so things were changing so quickly, using some of that technology to get everybody on the same page, especially since we're in lots of our physical locations or in different places, so that we could get quick responses, get information out quickly. Hey, everybody, we just found out this information. We need to do this thing. Get back with us today what you think you can do. And so I think it's certainly been give and take that way in terms of trying to communicate the information of things everybody has to do. And then also amongst our group saying, okay, what's been working, what hasn't been working. We're all together on a Zoom call, and we can kind of, there's give and take there between the different managers as we talk about best practices and what's working.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because the reality is, as leaders, I think we often, we want to think that we have the answers, but we're often not the ones that are kind of doing the job on the front lines, like seeing exactly how A leads to B leads to C, and so really bringing that group along is really helpful. I also want to go back a little bit to what you talked about with mental health. I think that is such an important topic here. Maybe Lindy, do you want to talk a little bit about, any experience that you're having been a business that's been open for some time now? How are you communicating with employees about not only the safety measures, but like how they should be taking care of themselves, and how they can create a dialogue, with you or with their managers about, how they're feeling either at work or outside of work about everything that's going on?
I think that's an incredibly important component to all of this, because at the end of the day, no business is going to be successful without the people in place. And if they're not doing well, physically, emotionally, mentally, then that definitely has an impact. And so for us, we have paid close attention. We have a wellness champion who has really taken the time to focus on communicating resources available to associates or feeling the stress and pressure of all of this right now. We've put together a toolkit for them specifically related to COVID and how to manage even just being at home. But I think it's reminding them continually that there are tools and resources available, and making sure that you do have them available for them when they need that. Whether it's getting enough sleep, down to ways to exercise at home when you're stuck behind a desk, kind of maybe eating for a healthier immune system. I think you can't discount the collective impact of those small efforts over time. And I think the consistency, the day-to-day messages, are you stopping? Are you caring for yourself and your families? I think that's really critical in terms of just kind of getting through this together as a state, as a team, as an organization. For our associates specifically, it was pretty stressful in the beginning because we did stay open. And I think it was Mark mentioned, things were changing so fast in the beginning that I feel like we had to adjust quickly. And it really put us in the position of having to ask a lot of our associates. And really, I think you could feel the stress building as a result of that. So really, that was when we pulled back on our hours and said, okay, we're not we're not going to run the hours that we've been running. We're just going to be open 12 hours a day, and that will give our people some time to take a step back and restock shelves safely. And so I think it's listening to what they're saying and taking those things into account, and it being nimble enough to adjust your operating procedures to account for some of those things. And I think that's really been key, because they have told us what they're concerned about. And if you're willing to listen, people will tell you what they think. So
Jane, can I jump in real quick to piggyback on Lindy's comments?
Yeah, please do.
So I love those. I mean, again, it's all about our teams, right? I mean, if they're not confident and comfortable, but it's also it's a stressful time. There's a lot of battle fatigue, whatever term you want to use. So we've been super focused on trying to make it, two of our core values are what I call our field goal. And one is be their hero, and the other one is have fun. And I think it's super important to remember that it can't all be dark and heavy and stressful. We've really got to try to lighten the load and make it fun. So we're doing, there's over and above financial things that we're doing to help. We're doing, ice cream Saturdays, and we're doing, local lunches where we give everybody money to go buy lunch locally to support other local businesses, because we're all in this together. And we really are. And I hope as a nation we can recognize that, but certainly locally we're seeing it. All the little stores that are opening, we're all working together, very symbiotic, and I think it's really healthy, and we're trying to embrace and support that, but while supporting our team. So I think it's super important, as everybody on here opens back up or continues on this path, that we remember it's a heavy time. When they come to work, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be stressful and different, but we as leaders really have to focus on making it fun to the best of our ability, to make it rewarding, to make them feel like they're making a difference, and continually embrace and nurture that. So I think having that wellness champion that Lindy mentioned is brilliant, and things like that are super important now, probably more than ever before.
I absolutely think you're right, Mark. And for us particularly, I think a coping mechanism is humor. This is really serious stuff right now, and I know people are feeling the fear and the pressure, but humor is pretty good medicine. And so we have an associate Facebook group that's a private group, and they'll post pictures and share jokes and share memes, and it's kind of brought people together in a unique way under unfortunate circumstances. But I think that for us anyway, it's given us an opportunity really to band together and overcome a challenging time. And the reward at the end of that day is the gratitude and thankfulness that our customers have shown, and being able to share that with our associates and let them know that their efforts don't go unnoticed, and that it's hugely appreciated by our communities. Because like it indicates in the poll, the confidence in health and safety measures implemented by the businesses, I think customers are curious about that. But once they know you're doing everything you possibly can do to keep people safe, they'll tell their friends, they'll tell their neighbors, they're going to tell everyone they know, hey, go to this business because I feel confident about the measures that they're taking to ensure my safety and yours. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think when it comes to some of the mental health resources, particularly for a lot of the smaller businesses, what I would say is don't be discouraged if you feel like, maybe there's a cost burden and you're not sure how to find those resources, or you're not sure if you can afford giving them to your employees. The nice thing is there is so much out there right now. If you do a quick Google search, of different resources and platforms that are available to for you to share with your team members. So, there's a lot of online workout tools that are offering free memberships for a period of time, so people can, get that health and fitness motivation that they may need, that they normally get at the gym. But more than that, there is telehealth and telehealth counseling. So, the opportunity to talk to a mental health professional, or there's apps. I think particularly if you employ people who are maybe a little bit younger and maybe thrive on kind of the digital connection. There's a lot of apps and things that you can provide to people that are actually free of cost right now. So I encourage you to, maybe if you're not at the same size and scale, where you're not really sure that you can provide things like through a wellness coach, like some of our bigger businesses can. Be that person for your employees, or maybe ask an employee who is good at that kind of thing to be that champion, to share with others organically what they're finding that can be helpful. So, I'm looking at the poll here, and it looks like, we've kind of leveled out on the results, and it looks like it's pretty split between the two top things, which is just confidence in health and safety measures implemented by the business, and then other, people following those health and safety measures. So let's maybe shift gears a little bit and talk about, Linda, you mentioned this towards the end of your last comment. How do you make sure people know what you're doing? So, it can be pretty obvious when somebody arrives at your business, what you're doing to, support the health and safety of your employees or of other customers and what the expectations are. But what about those people who aren't, at your doors yet? How do you show them or share with them what you're doing to entice them to come to your doors? So maybe I will lead off with you, Colton, and have you share with us how you're thinking about sharing for some of your restaurants what they're doing.
Sure. So I think that, certainly some of the traditional channels in terms of social media, other advertising, in terms of messaging, we've looked. This has certainly given us an opportunity to kind of look at how we do that. I think it's something that in the past we haven't been as good at, or maybe hadn't felt like it was as necessary because of just how our business had kind of been built. And so this has really given us an opportunity to look at how we reach out to people and how we connect with them. I think one of the great things that we've seen come out of it for us as well is just we've started to look at different partnerships or collaborations with other businesses, and I think that's also a way we've loved getting the word out. And so, it's like we've looked at an opportunity recently where we're partnering with one of the farmers that sells us lettuce, and we're starting to do. They sell these beautiful hydroponic greens that they grow in Pleasant Grove. This is at Snuck Farm, and they've been doing it for years. They do an amazing job, and they've supplied our restaurants for years. And through this time, we started collaborating with them, and we're putting together salad kits so that one of their CSA clients can buy the greens and now buy this kit to build a salad with those greens now. And so one of our restaurants is doing that. And so that, I think we started to look at other opportunities like that, like how do we kind of amplify the message that we have, because a lot of the social media, other channels, which are great, they're already reaching people that know about us and know what we're doing. And so how do we kind of spread that message a little bit further and wider? And we're certainly looking at doing it through collaboration and partnerships with other people who are doing great things.
That's great. I love that. Candace, maybe do you have any kind of thoughts or ideas on things that people can do to share what their business is doing to make people feel comfortable returning?
Sure. I know that a lot of my small businesses have some personal connections with a lot of their clients that come into their businesses. And they've been sending emails, they've been positive. They've worked with their employees to make sure their employees make the client feel comfortable when they walk in. We've only had now almost 1 week of some of these businesses being open. And of course, when you're talking cosmetology and related businesses and industries, there were so many people out there with really bad haircuts that were waiting to get a good haircut. And they've made in that particular industry, some of them have made some posters up that have really bad looking haircuts on these posters, and telling them they're working at making sure that their safety and their sanitation is taken care of. In this particular industry, they're always taught safety factors. They're taught that if you drop a comb, you don't reuse that. You put it in the barbicide, you get a new comb. You drop the brush, the same thing. You don't reuse any files or anything on a new customer that is coming in. You always use brand new files. You have to sterilize all of your equipment. For this particular industry, they do have to take temperatures of their customers when they come in, and the medical professions have to take temperatures of their customers when they come in. I don't think that's been, I've got to go back in my brain and think, I don't think that's been a requirement in many others, but because of the closeness of those services that are being provided. They wanted to do that, but signage has been big. They've put signs outside of their salons and outside of their schools because the cosmetology schools have now tried to reopen with their students, and they're going to be taking clients within the salons and within the schools. They've been working with all of them on confidence, and the signage has made the customers confident that they can come in. And so I think that's just a key factor. And watching them sanitize after they get done with the client in front of you, watching them sanitize everything down makes you feel very comfortable.
I think that's a really good point. Making it visible. I think sometimes, probably historically, we've leaned towards how do I kind of put some of these less attractive portions of my business behind the curtain so people can't see it. But what's actually a really interesting thought that I hadn't considered until you said that was I actually probably do want to see a little bit more of that than I normally would, and it actually would make me feel more comfortable going to a restaurant, being able to see how clean is it, what are they doing. So that's a really good point. I also loved your point on the creativity. How do you pull people in to make, some of those people who are willing to, see the more lighthearted side of it, that, this is the reality we're all living in. I think that, it's no one wants to be here. I think we all wish it was a little bit differently. But how are we making the best of the situation? Lindy, maybe if I can ask you, I know this is your area of expertise, and I'm a big Harmon shopper, so I've seen some of the things they've done there. But what advice would you give to some of these businesses as they think through making this visible, the advertising plans, particularly for people who aren't at the front door yet? How do you share with individuals?
I think the best way is to lead by example. And for us, we really started getting proactive with putting out media advisories, recommending things that people could do to shop safe. And right now, the media is looking for stories. Of course, coronavirus has kind of taken over all of our news channels, but we've taken advantage of the opportunity to kind of feed them content and let them know what we're doing so that they can share that information. That's been incredibly effective. Whether it's images of the plexiglass barriers that we've put at our check stands, or the stand here dots, or the one-way arrows that we put on our floors, all of that has been picked up by different news outlets, and that's been incredibly helpful with just getting the word out to the public about what we're doing. We also leveraged our billboard buy to do advertising up and down the interstate of how to shop smart. We advertised the fact that we had senior hours so that people would get the word out if they knew someone who was high risk or immunocompromised. And so I think you just kind of have to be creative. Aside from the traditional ways of social media, email, kind of communicating at the stores, we wanted to make sure that we were reaching people who weren't necessarily familiar with our processes already. Fortunate for us, we have a great reputation in the state of Utah for being very clean and being very customer service focused, but not everyone knows that about us. And so it was really important in the beginning for us to share with people how they could come prepared to have a great experience that was safe, but also the benefit of that was just getting the word out about exactly the steps that we were taking. So, I mean, even down to something as simple as not bringing your reusable bags into the store right now, because we don't know where they've been. We don't have any way of guaranteeing just kind of the sanitation of those items. So there were just a lot of things that needed to happen, and by asking people to do things, it organically got the word out.
I like the idea there that it was kind of threaded throughout your conversation about, sharing with the local media, for example. This is an opportunity. In some of our prior sessions, we've talked about how do you not only survive, but how do you thrive during this? And, if you do this the right way and make the right investments and have the right strategy around communicating what you're doing, it can really be additive to your brand, I would guess. So, maybe if you're not very well known now, because maybe you were a newer business, this could be an opportunity for you to really get out there and be known as kind of a safe place to shop, and will be a place that people return to after this. So, I think that's, a really good way to think about how you use this as an opportunity to really define who you are and who you want to be going forward as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think it's an example how you respond in difficult times. It demonstrates your brand, it demonstrates your character, it really kind of demonstrates who you are as a company. So absolutely, I fully concur with that.
Yeah. So, shifting gears, and I think some of this is tied to some of the things that we saw in the poll, but to some of the questions that we had submitted through the Q&A. And again, if those of you who are watching have questions that we maybe haven't addressed yet, please feel free to type those in, and we're going to be fielding some of those as we go through the next few minutes here. So the first one is how can we encourage employees to not come in if they are immunocompromised? So Mark or Lindy, I don't know if either of you have any experience with that and you want to speak to that.
Sure, I'll jump on that. So what's really interesting is what I have found is there's only so much we can do. And I've got a gentleman named Dave that is in the store that's adjacent to my offices. And I check him. Dave's about 70 years old, retired. I check with him every day. Dave, how are you feeling? Do you feel safe? He's like, Mark, I love being here. This is what I want to do. I know I could stay home, but at some point we can push, but you can only push so far for a lot of legal HR reasons. At the same time, a lot of people are like, I'd rather be here. We're doing all the safety stuff. I have total confidence and I don't want to go sit on the couch. Like, I'd rather be here doing this. I'll take my chances, but I'm not worried. And that's, again, going back to my whole thing is confidence in the practices we've put in place are so important for exactly that reason. So Dave, as my bellwether, makes me think or makes me feel confident that if people have chosen to stay, that's their choice. We've given them, everybody has the opportunity to stay home. And we've had about 10% of our workforce is selected to do that from time to time. Most are coming back. They're feeling confident and comfortable with what we're doing. And again, that I think reflects on what we're doing and that it makes sense.
I second that, Mark. We've had a lot of associates who've wanted to stay. And in some cases, if they are high risk, we've maybe found other opportunities for them to take positions and do different work in the store that maybe doesn't put them as high in as high risk a situation. So, we might move someone from the front end to a grocery position where they're kind of helping in a more socially distanced way. But we've had the same thing, people who want to come in despite, their particular risk category. And then also, like you said, we have encouraged people to do the thing that they feel best about. We don't want anyone to put themselves in a situation where they don't feel comfortable, because it does come back to that feeling of psychological wellness and kind of feeling comfortable coming to work. And so we do have some associates who have opted to stay home during the duration. And we've just kind of managed those on a case-by-case basis.
Jane, I have a comment, and it may not be relevant to everybody, but it's something that we adopted very early on. I take no credit for this. This was somebody on our team, but being deemed essential is important. And for a lot of reasons, that's helped us kind of design our go forward plan under the guise of being essential. But one of the mantras that we've adopted through this is be essential, act essential. And so everything that we do, and it goes back to Dave and everybody else, our staff has to be comfortable, engaged, and safe to be able to be essential to our communities. So it's that combination of doing the right things and breeding confidence. And what we have found, and it went back, I think Lindy may have said it earlier, the speed at which community observations are being shared socially has been unlike anything that I've seen before. And some of it's about product and everything, but I think a lot of that safety, hey, they're open, hey, they're helpful. I think we're getting, and it's something that I'm hopeful for, there's a lot of conversation around, we're seeing a lot of people that we've never seen before. And they're coming in, and I believe based on what we do, once we've got somebody in our doors, they'll come back based on our service and how we run our stores. And it goes back to that local, we're all trying, I think everybody on this call is looking for that go local, live local, shop local. We're small business. That's what we want. And I see a real opportunity here because big boxes may be a little daunting for a while. Going outside of our communities is lessened. Travel is lessened. People are hunkering down. That makes being local now probably more important than ever, and a very big opportunity that I think we can take advantage of in a very positive way. And I think it should benefit us all if we can do it right and figure out that recipe for success as we navigate this.
I think you're so right. There's a lot of opportunity here. I think, shifting gears a little bit. So on our last poll, we asked, about what would make customers come back, or, what are your concerns about customers coming back? And so, we've gotten a few questions along this vein here. And so I'll throw this out, maybe to you, Colton, first, but then also to any others who, want to ask is, how do you make sure that that your employees and your customers are healthy when they come to your location? So there's been a few questions around, are there specific apps, or, are there daily health screenings? Like, whether you're approaching that through a technology standpoint or not, how are you approaching that with your restaurants?
Sure. Yeah, I think Mark's touched on this, that, you can go to a point, but there's only so much you can do. And so we are really focusing on the things that we can control. And that a lot of that is really how we take care of our teams, how we look at our teams. So you have, we're doing daily temperature checks for all of the employees, and just daily questions, right? Are you feeling any symptoms, right, that are associated with COVID? Have you been around anybody that's had it or tested positive? So we're doing that daily check with our teams, and then I think making sure that that for our teams, that they're wearing masks, that they're washing, that they're interacting with customers in a really safe way. Those things we can control. I think we've been fortunate, at least in the early stages, the first few days of being open. We haven't had any negative interactions, I guess, with customers where we feel like this customer is obviously or visibly sick and we need to do something about it. And so I'm sure that will happen at some point. But I think that just using best practices to take care of what we can control, and then when those situations arise, to deal with them.
Well, this is Candace. One of the things that my small businesses have done is have regular meetings with their employees and their teams that they have. And these regular meetings, they're very open and very honest with their employees, explaining to them what they've learned and how they've learned about the spread of COVID-19 and what is going to be required of the business in order to follow the Utah Leads 2.0 document and the phased guidelines. They've also discussed with them the passage of Senate Bill 3007 by the state legislature that is some liability language that passed and the governor just recently signed that will allow that business to have a little bit of cover from lawsuits as long as they're following the rules. And you want your employees to understand why these rules need to be followed. And by doing that, they've found that their employees have been very helpful in helping everyone follow those rules and regulations. They've actually volunteered information of family members that may be compromised, of high risk, and they've been helping cover shifts for some of those people that have family members that are high risk so that they aren't out there and as exposed. Changing jobs like Lindy said with Harmon's. And I think the more you empower your employees to understand why you're doing this, the better they are at helping you accomplish all of those things. And then the easier it is for them to adjust and make sure that your customers and your clients are willing to come back because they can see that compliance.
So true. Yeah. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of just simply writing down what are the steps that you should take, and what are the things that you should be looking out for. And, if you think about, for your employees in particular, what are the things that they should be self-monitoring for at home? So that, there's just a degree of, what I know that if I'm following this list, and if we're all following this list, and thinking about the right things, that we're in this together and we're coming at this together as a community. There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot more resources as well, along that topic of, particularly how do I engage with customers or employees with checklists and things. We've actually posted some resources on siliconslopes.com /COVID-19. So after our session today, I encourage all of you to go there. There's an app that you could potentially look at using that we've taken a look at, and looks like it may be helpful to some of our small businesses who are just, wanting to have some confidence that their employees have gone through the checklist themselves, but it doesn't share any personal information. So take a look there. I really encourage you to take a look at those resources that are posted there, not only for that, but also some of the government guidelines and other things that we've covered here today. Looks like we have one more question that just came in. So I'm going to open this up to anybody on the group. So hopefully we'll get a volunteer. How are you approaching employees that would rather not come back to work because the unemployment benefits are greater than what they would make when they do come back to work? So, particularly for those of you that are looking to reopen, and maybe you're concerned about just being able to staff your locations. Maybe can I get a volunteer to take a first pass at that question?
I'll jump in there. This is Colton. Yeah, it's been interesting. We've certainly seen that in a number of our restaurants. In the very early days when we didn't really know what was happening, we were having those discussions with employees and saying, for those of you that want to look at, furloughing or going on unemployment, giving them resources to do that. And as things changed and as there was additional funds put into that program, for a number of people that went on unemployment, they were making more per week, on unemployment than they were maybe working in the restaurant. And so it's been a unique challenge because we've had, one of the first things we did in the beginning was, what are we going to do to, how are we going to be a business still, right? As things have shifted, what are we going to do that we can actually be a business or be in business? What projects can we work on, and how are we taking care of our team? And so we had a lot of projects we were working on, but it has been difficult at times to get people to come in and do that because of this dynamic. But I think what we've started to see too is that this is maybe an opportunity for us as we continue to move forward to say, to really maybe more clearly articulate what our vision is and where we're going, and that for those who it resonates with, they'll be on board, and for those that it doesn't, that it's an opportunity maybe to find others that are maybe more excited about what we're doing or where we're going and want to be a part of that.
I'll jump in. This is Mark. Because we never closed, we didn't run into that, although there's been a fair bit of talk about the what ifs because of the nature of that program. I think some of that maybe helped us reinforce the need to go after the have fun aspect of the business and keep people engaged and, again, empowered and make them feel appreciated and part of the team and all those things. At the same time, my hope is, as a good employer and doing everything in our power to stay relevant and stay a good place to work and a good place to shop, that people don't want to leave. And if they do, maybe in the back of their head, they could make more money on unemployment. But with unemployment going as high as it is already, the opportunity to replace them and maybe even upscale our workforce a little bit for, we have some real opportunity that none of us had. I mean, it was very, very hard to staff for the last few years until about 8 weeks ago. And all of a sudden we've had an opportunity that we haven't had in a long time that we can take advantage of. I hope it doesn't come to that for us, because I would love to keep our people happy and engaged. But if somebody does want to pursue that, I think we have some real opportunity to find very good people that are going to be very hungry for a job immediately.
One other thing on that I'm not sure was covered, but making sure your employees understand the ramifications for them not wanting to come back when the job is offered to them, because our state unemployment office is tracking all of those that have applied for unemployment, and they're tracking where they worked, and they're going to track when that business opens back up and whether or not that employee comes back in. I don't think they realize that the state system is that sophisticated, and they may end up having to pay back some unemployment that they got that they shouldn't have gotten if they chose not to go back to work when the offer was given.
That's super interesting. Not something I was, I'm not fully surprised, but not something I was even aware of, Candace. So thank you for sharing that. With that, I think, we're out of questions from the audience. And so I'm not sure if there's any other final parting words from the panelists. I'm getting a bunch of smiles. Awesome. Well, again, I just wanted to highlight siliconslopes.com/COVID-19 and coronavirus.utah.gov. Those seem to be, the two main resources that we heard a lot about today. So head there. There's information on both of those about how to screen employees, tips about how to engage your teams, how to navigate PPE, and all these other confusing things that we're all learning as we go. So go there today, go there regularly. We're learning a lot as we go. And we'll go there. So, thank you again to our panelists. I know I have found this valuable, hearing your perspective coming from a lot of different industries and different experiences and even different geographies. Mark, thank you for joining us from California and contributing to the Utah community. As a proud Utah native, somebody who grew up and was born and raised here, I love the sense of community that came through in the panel today. I think that was one of the main messages I took away, whether it was community as you're putting together your plans, reaching out to your peers and other establishments and your employees and your customers to really engage in how do I reopen in a way that makes sense for everybody. Leveraging social media to get the word of mouth out, to make sure that once you're ready to open, people know what you're doing and they feel like they can come and shop at your business and they know that you're safe, and really leveraging that word of mouth that runs strong in our community. So those are some of the key takeaways that I took away from the discussion today. And I thank all of you for joining us. Colton, maybe I'll just pass it over to you to wrap things up for us. Or not Colton, I'm sorry, Tanner.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Great name as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. I think that was super helpful. Jane, incredible job moderating. Candace, Lindy, Mark, Colton, thank you for volunteering. We really appreciate it. I think the small business community and Utah together has shown great solidarity in this effort and trying to help each other. And so, watching that from the sideline and on the field, it's been incredible to see. So thank you for that. I think, as Jane mentioned, there's a lot of tremendous insights around being creative, around not being afraid to show your internal processes, around cleaning or things to show your customers that you are doing everything you can to serve them the best that you can. So with that, next week, I just wanted to give you a sneak preview. We're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to continue the conversation, involve a little bit on how you should think about pivots or adapting your business. We did a part 1 on this a few weeks back, and we're going to focus this upcoming week a bit more on pivoting on Main Street. So not venture-backed companies like we had discussed before, but retail, restaurants, hospitality. And we want to think about, and we're going to dive deeper into strategies around adapting your business. So look out for that next week, this upcoming Thursday. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you soon.